Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, in the studio is my good friend, my co-pilot, my producer, the guy that makes all this stuff happen for us. Otherwise, we would not be here. Dan the man. Hello, Dan. How's Dan doing today?
Dan is doing great today. Hello, everyone out there. Welcome to the show.
Glad you're here. So we are doing the topic of the recovery path. Is it worth it today? And I promise you, if you don't feel any juice after this podcast, we either failed, or as my friend Travis said in a meeting recently, you don't have a soul. So we hope you get excited about this option, and this is for everyone, okay? We preach recovery for everybody. It's my firm belief that everybody out there in the matrix needs to recover from this false world we're all living in, and we all agree is not working, and we all agree sucks, and yet people just keep sucking it down like it's reality, politics, whatever. It's not reality. It's only the reality we formed for ourselves. Recovery gives you that option to live outside the matrix or in the fourth dimension, as Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, called it. So I hope you'll join us on your own personal path of recovery of whatever you need to recover from. And we all have stuff in our childhood, our past, our emotions, our disappointments, our losses, grief, you name it, trauma. So join us, and I hope you'll get something out of this podcast. Just to get us started, I did want to talk to Dan for just a second and catch you all up. You know, it's one of the hardest things besides having a child that's ill or a child that passes away is when you have to care for an aging parent, and I've been going through that with my mother. She's in a nursing home. Hello, Mom. She's still watching us out there, and she's doing great. She's doing great. Just talked to her on the way to the podcast, and it's just a blessing. My mother's going to turn 90 years old this year in May. Happy birthday, Mom, early. And it's extraordinary. But, you know, first, A, you're so grateful to still have your parent around because a lot of people don't. But then, B, to have to watch, you know, health issues and the natural decline of life. It's very, very hard to go through. And my poor friend Dan is going through that now with his father. And, you know, your dad's been in pretty good shape right up till recently. And then all of a sudden it kind of just shifts like that.
Yep. On January the 19th this year, he woke up, was getting ready to take off his sleeping shirt, and he couldn't raise his hands up over horizontal. Couldn't bring his hands up over his head. And then shortly after that, or however it went down, he started saying that he had the sensation of his hands were in boiling water. And it was just so painful. And like I said, you know, we watched, watching Mom go in 2014 months sober in 2016. And it was a slow process with Mom. You can't help but be like a little bit, running over into that lane with my alcoholic brain. But we've got him scheduled for a surgery. He's got and I don't know what which neck bulging disc it is, what number it is, but his disc is bulging in on his spinal cord.
Jeez.
And pinching it. And it's about a 50%. If you look at the imagery when we was looking at the MRI. And, doctor's a little bit unsure about working on a guy at 87 years old. But after having a consultation and everything and seeing how good a shape Dad actually is in, really prior to this setback, he said, he gave me a great deal of confidence that he could do it. I can do it. And it's and what blows me away is that that's a pretty okay. We're going to replace a disc, put an artificial disc in, and it's just an outpatient thing, and you'll walk out the hospital.
That's insane.
Crazy. So that's coming up, but it's been rough because we were I don't know, twice we've been in the ER, and then once they admitted him for a couple days, and that surgery's at the end of this month. This is being taped on March the 6th, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And his surgery is scheduled for March the 28th. His surgeon's out of town, so hopefully he's going to come back in town on the 10th or 11th or someplace in that neighborhood. So I'm going to get on the horn and see if we can't do anything to move that up.
Now, what's really cool about recovery is that plugging into a support group, there's always a silver lining, and the silver lining is just watching all of your supports just pour out the woodwork. Travis coming over to check in on your dad.
Yeah.
People calling you. You're in the Discord, so you're getting constant feed and being able to update your friends. And that's almost overwhelming when you get that wow, people actually give
It
a
is.
fuck about me, because we're just used as addict alcoholics. We've been the bad dog for so long, nobody cares, nobody wants to hear from us. But then in recovery, it's the exact opposite. You're almost overwhelmed with the amount of love.
Yeah, it is. And I have been overwhelmed a couple times. I mean, I could be brought to tears over the amount of support that I have. It's tears of joy and gratitude. But I mean, I fog enough right now to think about how much these relationships mean to me.
And that's what we're talking about when we talk about recovery, which is available to you if you'll get your ego out of the way and start thinking about how you can plug into a group. Because some study I was watching in a training, they were talking about the number of people that Americans feel they can call on as a close friend during a crisis has declined steadily since the advent of social media. So here we are, more plugged in, and all these people know what's going on our Facebook page, but then we can't call them when this shit really hits the fan. And that's the exact opposite of recovery. Is you'll have so much help. It's like, stop bothering me. I've got to deal with my dad in the hospital. I can't keep answering the phone, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is like that. Yep.
It's like, wonderful.
When Brian made a call out to help his aunt move, she lives down on the river and was going to get flooded, and she needed some help getting some stuff relocated. She's an old gal. We had too many people there. You couldn't. Sometimes you were just standing around because everything was getting taken care of. There wasn't enough people to, wasn't enough work to keep everybody busy. And that's the way I see us show up for one another.
It's so wonderful
in that kind of world, and in like the emotional and that end of the world too. When you need somebody to talk to.
So as we say, or as our friend Travis likes to say, join us. It's available to you, and we will help you get there. So I hope your dad's going to be fine. And I've been coaching Dan since I've been through some of this. If you're going through this out there, you kind of got to take it one day at a time, Let's not jump to conclusions like, oh, get the will. It's like, wait a minute, now your dad's back home and he's relatively okay.
He's stable at the moment. He
Yeah.
has very little use of his hands, but we're hoping that this gets taken care of. He will be back to at least someplace close to normal.
That's awesome. And thank God there's something they can do.
I feel confident about it. I feel optimistic about it. That's the other thing about working a program of recovery. You get this fourth dimension includes some feelings that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
I joke around about my crystal ball, but I've had a couple opportunities here, and I love the fact that I can trust my intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think Dad's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I felt good signing up for this job that I haven't had a real job in 6 years, and they've called me back, and I feel confident about it, and I like that. And and I know also today when the universe is telling me whoa or no, I know that answer too, and I can say no, this is not for me.
Yeah. And just for any of y'all joining us for the first time, Dan has had a real job, the best job. He works for himself, but now he's thinking maybe I could use that little extra padding just in case.
Yep.
Any job service you provide, there's always good times and lean times. So
Yep.
I think it's a good idea.
Place that I worked for 28 years and laid me off 6 years ago, come knocking on the door, giving me an offer I almost can't refuse.
It's so wonderful.
I can't.
All right, so let's get to our topic today before we hold you in suspense any longer. I like stories and analogies and movies, and those are just easier to remember than words. So I was told this story a while ago. I can't remember where I picked it up. It's one of those things that's just collected in my library of stuff in my head. And this guy was talking about, imagine you've gone to a site in a foreign country, and they're telling you that if you climb to this peak, you're going to see a scene that is the most breathtaking, knock your socks off, life-altering landscape scene you've ever seen in your entire life. The only thing is it's going to take a bit of an effort to get up that hill. And so you're like, oh, hey, it sounds good. Sign me up. So you go to the thing, and you start walking, and about quarter up, you're like, they weren't kidding about a walk. This is a challenge, and I'm not sure I can do this. So you keep going, though, because you're like, well, they're telling me it's the fucking best thing in the world, so I want to do this. So you keep walking, and you're walking, and then eventually you come across a visitor, a person who's walking down the path, who has just been to the site. And that person is coming towards you, and they've got this big, beatific smile on their face, and they're like glowing like they've seen the face of God. And you're looking at them, and you're like going, I just need to know one thing. And you're panting because you're breathing so hard from all that exertion. Just, is it worth it? And what you want to hear him go is, dude. That's what you want them to. You want them to look you in the eye and go, dude. Not even say a word. Just that response, okay, I got to go see this for myself. And that is the journey of recovery. The journey of recovery is you have no friggin' concept how good it truly is. And I just did an aftercare group today where we had all of our aftercare patients come in, people who have graduated recently. I also have aftercare patients who have been sober many, many, many years, still come back, help support the aftercare. And they're all saying the same thing. It's great. It's the best thing ever. You got to come do it. And my patients, it just goes one ear out the other, right? Because we've all heard the sales job in America. Your results may vary. There's always a catch, right? But hold on. So I wanted to address that today to get you sort of amped up so you can know what you're signing up for, kind of. Because a lot of people say, well, recovery, what are we talking about? And what is so different from just this normal life I'm walking right now, right? And my experience is, I was in my home group just a couple weeks ago, and our friend Travis, again, for those of you that want to check out his podcast, he's Travis the Trainwreck. We did his story a few months ago. He said, all right, I want to do a poll. I want everybody in the group to raise your hand if the day that you hit your bottom and you thought it was the worst thing, that I want everybody to raise their hand. And the day that you hit your bottom and you had to go into a treatment center, or you had to face going to AA and admit you were an alcoholic, how many of you thought it was the very worst day of your entire freaking existence? And absolutely everybody's hand went up in the room. And then they all lowered it. And he said, all right, second question. How many of y'all would say that the way you look at it now, it turned out to be the greatest day in your entire life? And everybody raised their hand. Now, how is that possible? How do you go from looking at something and saying, this is going to be horrible, this is not what I want to do, this is not where I want to go, and then today you're saying, I can't even put a dollar value on what I have on this path that I've walked. And we talk about that in aftercare all the time too. It's like, I wouldn't accept $10 million, $50 million tax-free to give up my recovery. There's no freaking way I would sell it, because it's priceless what you get. So I wanted to break it down for you. What are we talking about? How do you get there? And then get a little bit of Dan the Man's experience in here, so it's not just one jerk talking and you're like going, oh, sure, it's easy for him to say he wants to sell me something. No, we actually don't. We're not selling any products on this podcast. We're just doing this out of service work to help you. So what I didn't know, okay, so I'm coming into this deal and they're talking about sobriety and recovery, and I like the word recovery better than sobriety, which if you haven't heard me define yet, the old definition says to go back and reclaim that which has been lost. Dan added on or stolen. So to go back and reclaim that which has been lost or stolen, which is like your childhood joy, okay? If you see pictures of yourself when you were 1 or 2 years old before this world changed you, you were happy to be here, you could enjoy the present moment, you could get into playing with things and losing yourself and having fun, and there was always like a reason to get up in the morning and you couldn't wait to get to do things, and where's that gone? Where's that little boy or girl gone to, right? So that's a major part of recovery, to heal those wounds that have happened over the years that are basically your little kid is buried under, can't even express itself. But what I didn't know I was signing up for is what I call the spiritual path, which is what recovery truly is. Bill Wilson goes to great lengths, Bill Wilson being the co-founder of AA, he goes to great lengths to explain that we needed a spiritual approach to our alcoholism. And he was brilliant to understand that, because he figured out that addicts and alcoholics needed something that had weight and depth and meaning on a deeper level than just normal life. Like, you can get us sober for a while. If I've got a judge who's going to lock me up for 20 years, Dan's been able to do that. If I've got consequences, I'm going to lose my family, I can actually sober up for a while if I haven't progressed to a point of total loss of control. There is a point you get to where you can't do that. However, you get me inspired about something that I want and I'm passionate about it, man, I'm like laser focused. I'm going to go and get it. I don't care if it's that girlfriend. I don't care if it's that job or that new car. If it's an actor, an alcoholic, if I want it, I make it happen. And he was brilliant to figure out that we need something that gives meaning and purpose and a reason to get out of bed in the morning to our lives. And that is the spiritual path. So you might be saying, well, what do you mean? Well, to me, the spiritual path comes all about, can I see what's happening in my daily life in terms of the bigger picture? And Dan can give his own version and see how this relates to him. But literally, as I'm going through my day and I'm seeing that guy in traffic and I'm paying my bills and I'm doing all the stuff that other people are doing, I'm actually having a deeper level experience of life if I'm walking the spiritual path, meaning that I'll slow down to talk to the person behind the counter a little bit. I'll look them in the eyes instead of just trying to just get out of my way so I can get to the next thing. You know what I'm saying? I'll be at the grocery store and I'm maybe more compassionate to what's happening and be able to see things. And you have different eyes on, is what I could say. And that sense of meaning to your life, only thing I can equate it to is perhaps an artist. I think a dedicated artist who's just given everything to their art maybe is walking that same sort of spiritual commitment path. I think musicians are on that vibe. They just have a different feel to them when you talk to them. But I did not know that I was signing up for what I'd been looking for my entire life, which was, why am I here? What's this all about? What does Christopher's life mean in the bigger picture? What do I want to leave behind as my legacy? What is my meaning? How do other people feel about me in terms of what am I going to leave behind with these people? And there's a consciousness, an enlightenment, if you want to say, that occurs with you as you continue to grow spiritually, where you're more mindful of this stuff in your daily affairs, right? And whereas I see a lot of people out there kind of going through the motions, like, got to feed the kids, got to take them to school, got to do all this, and they seem kind of empty and they're not smiling. Spiritual people always almost have a little bit of a smile on their face. They certainly have a peace about them. I've seen that. And it's attractive and it's comfortable to be around. And so it's all about this idea is, will I go on this deeper path to learn about who I am, what's in my way, like what's my past stuff, my trauma that I got to get out of the way that's preventing me from going further. And really a key element is that humility to be open to new things. And I never would have been like that had I not taken the spiritual path. I was very closed off. My friend Dan has a saying where he says, with an addict or an alcoholic, you can offer them a fresh plate of hot-baked chocolate chip cookies, and they'll go, no, I'm good. No, I'm all right. I don't need those. Thank you. And it's like, you want one, but they'll just turn it away instantly because we have those walls up. We're so shut down. And that's kind of how I was in life. And I think I was just basically being raised to be another American consumer out there. I knew that I was being told by my family and society that it's important to have money. It's important to have possessions so you can show off. You definitely have to have a cool car if you want a girl. You definitely have to be in shape and be built like, I don't know, fucking Schwarzenegger or whatever to be, a man's man. And in the meanwhile, I didn't even know what my identity was underneath that. I was adopting society and my family's sense of who I was. And it wasn't until I found recovery that I started going on this journey of learning and getting okay with, I think is a big part of it, who Christopher was. And I think a lot of addicts and alcoholics suffer from that self-hatred thing. We just kind of don't like ourselves. I come from a long line of family, Irish Catholics, some of them, and drinkers for sure. And I think they hated themselves. It says deep down, like loathing. And, but this acceptance of my flaws and who I am and my feelings. Shoot, addicts and alcoholics never admit they have a feeling. That's the journey I began. And I never would have been open to it before, but because of the crucible of alcoholism, which broke my back enough to make me say, okay, I'll listen to what you got. And everybody has to go through something, it seems like, in life. You may have gone through a terrible loss in your family, a death. It might be losing a job, a career. I mean, right now, this is not a political statement, but anybody that doesn't have any compassion for people who have worked their entire lives at a certain profession, and out of nowhere you get a letter on your desk saying your services are no longer needed by a person that you've never met and has never evaluated what you've done, and it's not even based on the quality of work you're doing, I can't even imagine what those poor people are going through. And those kind of crucibles are what cause the willingness to be open to new paths and new ways. It's just the way life is set up as far as I've seen it. So whatever your pain is, you can actually transform that based on your willingness to walk whatever way the universe seems to be pushing you. And to me, it was pretty easy to figure that out because every time I didn't want to go the other way and go my way, I would always relapse. And so it was like, okay, it seems like the universe keeps resetting me back at zero, that I have to face my drug use. But I say, but I want to go over here and do this. And then I'm back at a treatment center. Wait a minute. I don't want to go here and do this. And if you're open to it and you listen to it, I think the universe is always trying to communicate with us. You can't hear it because you're all filled with your own noise. But I think it will guide you if you open up to it. But what makes us open? Pain. It's that old saying that says, suggestions we take under advisement, but pain we obey. I love that because it's true about all human beings. We don't listen unless we're broke down. So some of the gifts I'll just go over, and we're going to talk a lot about this. This may devolve into a podcast where Dan and I are going back saying, this is the best thing about recovery. This is the best thing about recovery, because there's so much. But I wanted to share a few of my things and then have Dan share a few of his things about these gifts that you get that you just cannot put a dollar amount on. And they're available to anybody. And our goal with this podcast is to bring it to everybody. We have groups in town right now that are 12-step groups for anybody. And right now we're getting the book together, which is going to be called I Am One Too, just like the podcast, which is designed to take you personally through this work without even having to have a sponsor, so it'll be understandable. So you can get this too and start our own meetings so that normal people have a place to go. There's just about a 12-step fellowship group for everything that's out there, but there's not one for so-called normal people, whatever that is, right? So we're working hard to try and do that because we want to share that with everybody. So I know that my friend Dan had an interesting experience with one of his podcast members recently, and I'm going to sort of pick his brain a bit as we go along so I can take a breather to catch my breath. But you want to share a little bit about that experience?
I'm assuming you're talking about the meditation with Rosalia.
Yeah, and just meeting her in the first place. What are the chances, right?
Well, I was going to say that about all these wonderful people that have been coming on my Spiritual Underground podcast. That I've been having people from all over the world are bringing me juice. They're bringing me food for thought and causing my mind to be continually stimulated about this. How high can we go with this spiritual kind of thing? How plugged in can I get? And I can't imagine being a whole lot more plugged in than I am today without some kind of like supernatural something going on, But, he's talking about these these signs from above. One gal talked about them, said they were downloads. She receives downloads, and I kind of like that because it goes with the opposite of that is my computer virus that hijacks my operating system where I was. And as long as my operating system is hijacked by this virus that I had called alcoholism, as long as that's in place, I don't get those downloads. And now with a clearer mind and walking in with my compass needle in the right direction, I get to run into people like Rosalia, who is a Cuban shaman. And we just hit it off, how sometimes, but most of my guests are like that. You sit down and talk to them. We're speaking the same language, but using different words. We're talking about a similar kind of experience, but using different words. And run into Rosalia and just hit it off with her, and she asked me onto her podcast. And in the middle of her podcast, she just stopped. She said, she basically talked about it like it was a download. She said, I don't know where this has come from, but will you take me through this work?
Wow. And
I had just given like maybe the best executive summary of what the 12 steps is on her podcast because I thought I only had 15 minutes. So I piled it in. And at the end of it, she said, will you take me through this? So she's sharing some energy healing with some of her energy healing techniques with me, while ultimately at some level, that's what working the 12 step is a healing methodology, healing energy work to get you cleaned up. So she took me through what she called a zodiac meditation the other night. And I'm almost a little bit scared not scared. I'm funny to talk about it. It was so exciting. I thought it was, first off, I thought it only lasted 15 minutes. When I opened my eyes, 2 hours had gone by. I had felt and sensed the presence of my mother like she was sitting right next to me. I had similar kind of thing with grandparents. She didn't give me any prompting to lead me there either. But she did have verbal prompts that were super cool, put chills up and down my back. And when I woke up, the front of my shirt was wet. And my eyes, and I wasn't asleep, But she did lead me into some kind of state that, well, and that's what happens when we meditate. Hopefully, that's what we're kind of shooting for when we meditate. It don't happen very often. But my eyes were full of tears. Face was wet, beard was wet. And by all accounts, it looked like I had been crying for some point in time. And it was more a joy cry again. It didn't feel sorrowful. And it's another one of these things like trying to tell somebody what a strawberry tastes like. I say use that as far as trying to get this point across what the 12 steps does for you. That meditation, trying to describe what happened. This is part 1 of 3. She said, we're going to do it again once a month for 3 months. And I should have took some notes, like journaled right after it. I should have done that, but I was too blown away to. I didn't have my head on straight. I'd had a spiritual experience that like knocked my socks off, and I wasn't my head wasn't screwed on straight whenever I got done. And just hitting it off with her. And another, if I hadn't worked the 12 steps, if I hadn't have done that work, no way would I have been open to be able to allow Rosalia to take me, because she can't make me go someplace I don't want to go. But I was open enough to be able to do that, and we get to have these. I actually thought of it just a minute ago. I need to add that to my miracle list. Nothing like it. And getting to meet these wonderful, wonderful people who are forces for the good. And there's something going on with Rosalie and I, and I'm excited to see what that's going to do down the road too, because it's already been exciting.
And I don't think anyone can miss it by watching your expressions and the way you're sharing that story. The impact, the emotional and profound spiritual impact that experience had on you, that, let's say, over 10 years ago, I came to you, stranger, you don't know me, and I say, hey, I got this woman from Cuba. She wants to put you in a deep trance state. What would you have said?
Yeah, same, just crazy stuff, same thing.
I don't believe in that.
Yeah, get out of here. What are you smoking?
Yeah, you're probably trying to rob me or con me, right?
Yeah, yep. And that's a lot of the things, in recovery you don't think that you'd be doing, and it goes right along with what you said. The worst thing that could ever have happened to me as I'm standing in front of a judge in New Albany saying the sentencing guidelines for the crimes you committed is 6 to 20 years in the Indiana Department of Corrections. That was a pretty tight spot. I was really worried. I was really scared. But it was ultimately a piece of the catalyst that got me to where I am today, and having so many great experiences, great relationships that you lose count.
Well, and the miracle that might be missed here is what you started with was not just average American conservative state, closed-mindedness maybe, but the alcoholic state. The alcoholic state is so negative and so distrustful and skeptical, and contempt prior to investigation, that, you had just a tiny bit of it when she was saying, yeah, I'll take you through my stuff and you can take me through 12 steps. And you're like, well, I'm open to it, but I don't know if she's really going to want to do it. And, because that's true. We get a lot of people come in all guns fired and then they just don't want to really do the work. Or maybe they just peter out, whatever it is. But you fought through that. You still said, no, I'm going to give it a try. And that little shift of recovery, that openness, no, let me at least try it. Let me just, before we say no, let's check it out first. That alone has served me so well. I would not have met my major spiritual teachers in my life had I not said, okay, I'll go. And I was not like that before. I was like, oh, who wants to do that? There's a woman in my life who's an angel whisperer, and this woman is guided by an angel named Josephine. And you can scoff all you want, but if you walk in her place and she says 2 sentences to you, you're going to be like, how in the hell do you know that about me? I've never met you. She's plugged in. You either know. And I've been to people who were charlatans that I had to walk out. Had a girlfriend in Minnesota that we went to this place over in Wisconsin or whatever, and she's like, oh, I love this person. And I went in there and I was like, she's a fake. You can just feel it. I had to walk out. I was just like, ugh, this is awful. But when somebody has it, you don't know until you go and you give it a try. And, how many of us are stuck in our little matrix and we want desperately for something to come along. We want something exciting in our lives. And then maybe you get a little message, hey, go call so-and-so or go check out this. And you don't even get the download, as you say, because you're so filled up with your noise And so you said your noise was alcoholism. It could be the noise of the corporate world. And they've got you brainwashed that you got to work 18 hours a day and chase the ladder and, make as much money as possible. And that's your noise where you will never be able to get in touch with it. So the steps are literally designed to disentangle you. I was trying to find the right word. That's disentangle you from all this programming and conditioning of what you think you are, because you're not. And it's sad to say 95% more of the population out there is walking around not knowing who they are. But that's what the spiritual path does, is it gives you a chance to go on the journey to find out who you are. And I don't know, I can't even imagine, because these are the people I'm going to think I'm on my deathbed. These are the people I'm going to think about what I accomplished in life. My greatest memories are all around my spiritual journey. Like going to see the Dalai Lama for 10 days. And the friends I met through that, it's kind of sad to think about how closed off and stuck in a routine and shut down and depressed a lot of people are. And they don't realize that depression and anxiety is trying to give them a message to change, do something different, right?
Yeah.
And I know, because I will try to get my patients to offer it to their loved ones. Alcoholism is a family disease. Everybody that's been around the person has been blighted by the negativity of this condition. And, not very few of them will pick up the challenge to read a book even, or to go check out a meeting, to go to Al-Anon or whatever. And it's extremely sad. So, what about the friends and the community? I know we talked a little bit about that earlier, but having friends in different states, sometimes in different parts of the world, and you've made some friends, it's just, I don't know how to even explain it. I know that my friend Jamie went to France one time, and he went to a meeting, and guy met him there. He didn't understand French, and the guy didn't really speak good English, but the guy brought him to his house for dinner, and he had dinner with his family, and they've stayed in touch over the years. And it's just this weird journeys you go on that you never would have had, stuck in your routine, going to the factory every day and then coming home, drinking your beer or whatever. Taking you outside your comfort zone. That's what spirituality does.
Yep. And I tell people, almost every one of my clients ends up being a friend. And they seem to be, they get put in touch with such interesting people doing interesting things. And these people coming on the podcast, and I make friends with those. And that's all outside the wonderful powerfulness of my actual inner circle of my home group. But all over the place. I've got, I still have a relationship with a guy I worked with back at that old job, and he still works there, and or a few of them, and that live in Bangkok, Thailand, and we converse semi-regularly. And they know I'm sober, and they knew me before I was sober too. That's another thing about like that work job thing. Most of those people knew me before I was sober, so they see how far I've come too. And you almost unfairly get a whole bunch of personal points for being sober, dude. People think, wow, man, like I was like, yes, it is great, and it is hard to beat it. I get that, but sometimes it feels a little odd to have that extra juice poured on you because you stopped doing something you shouldn't have been doing. But it is. I've got friends all over this world today, and I would never think that I'd have as many friends as I've got in the inner circle too.
And I get to sit ringside and watch this on a daily basis between you and Shane. He works for himself as a plumber, Dan's a handyman. They're going out on a daily basis into strangers' homes, never met these people before. And at the end of it, Shane says, I never leave a customer that I'm not getting a hug. Now, when was the last time you hugged your serviceman who came over and worked on your furnace? You know what I'm saying? And this is a regular occurrence. And it's just, again, that energy that when you've developed yourself and spent enough time getting rid of your garbage, people are naturally drawn to that positive energy, And I know when you're out in public, I know you like to sort of offer smiles to people and try and get them to react and stuff, which is not easy to do in the world we have today, right?
Yeah, I try, again, that old David G thing. I want to leave good juju behind everywhere I went, and not just neutral. I want the people feeling like, and it's not a people-pleasing thing kind of deal either. At least I don't think so. But I want them, when Dan Reeves comes over and works for them, I want them to have positive experience and want Dan to come back again, you know, and I don't have to really work too hard at doing that. We wear this stuff. Somebody said it not too long ago, it might have been you, but somebody talked about wearing it like a suit. Your recovery shows, and they may not know what it is. And it's amazing too, and Shane had echoed the same thing about how many times the topic of recovery somehow or another comes into the conversation, and I'm just not closed off about it. You know, not too long ago, some girl, I was talking about my friends, you know, and I was just talking. And some people were doing some stuff, and I was just talking, and she said, "How is it that you have so many like close relationships with so many men?" And she asked me that straight up. She's from Canada. She heard it, and she just come out and asked. She said, "Well, that's unusual." I said, "Well, that's what 12-step recovery can do for you. You get a whole bunch of really good friends." It's wild to you know, once Shane or I or one of us works for somebody like that, they probably will never call anybody else for what they need.
Yeah, I've seen that. They're loyal for life.
Yeah.
And every addict or alcoholic I've worked with comes in, including me, with that, well, I don't want people to know. And my recovery is, my anonymity is so important to me, you know. And as you grow spiritually, you're like, well, wait a minute, the more anonymous I am and they can't find me. And I remember our good friend Scott Lee said, I give my full name in a meeting. I want people to find me in the phone book if they need to reach me. I said, brilliant idea. Why didn't I think about that? And we're not hiding anymore. I always joke with Dan, it's a good sign that my newcomer's making progress when he puts a personalized message on his answering machine. Not the, you have reached 502. He's still hiding. I say, what are you hiding from, man? They ain't looking for you anymore. Give him a good greeting. Say, hello, how you doing? Here's the juice. What's up? I just picked up my taxes yesterday, and I see this lady once a year. And once a year, she catches me up about how her daughter's doing because she has addiction. And she's sharing family stuff with me that, you know, why? I'm a stranger. But she gets up from her desk, and she's happy to see me, and I can see that smile on her face. And like Dan said, we're not coming in like a game show. It's like, hey, I'm here. Blah, blah, blah. No, we're just coming in with that good juju. It's just an aura of, you know, this guy seems healthy. He doesn't seem like he's going to infect me with some slime. And
he's crazy, you know.
And I left, and she was all, her energy had shifted.
Yeah.
And she needed to tell me, you know, her daughter is really struggling over the years, and now she's back in treatment. And I was like, hey, she's safe. This is good. She's back in treatment. That's good. And I don't know, I could feel her energy shift just from me, you know. And it seems like, well, that's just a small, stupid. No, it's not. It may be the one thing she needed to hear that day to help her with her journey dealing with an addict daughter. And you got to do that. You got to be that person. That is another great thing about the spiritual path is the world and the universe has use for you. They have jobs for you to do if you're open to being that guy. Shane is a guy who regularly finds purses and wallets and flowers or whatever on the road. And then he's the guy that goes and takes the wallet back to the guy. He just had that happen again recently. And it's almost like he's telling higher power every morning, how can I serve you? Which is a great prayer. And then guess what? Opportunities show up where he's like, this isn't just about my work day. It's just not about getting my paycheck. I can take 15 minutes to make sure I am my brother's keeper and get his wallet back to him without stealing his damn money. And, you know, how many people in this world would do that? I know a lot, but I have to tell you, sometimes I wonder if 12-step isn't the true Christianity the way it was supposed to be from the beginning. That I am my brother's keeper, and that everything I do for the lowest I also do for so-called Jesus. And, you know, walking that path of feeling good about yourself, that there's more to my day than just the routine or America or the headlines and all that jazz. It's just, you feel such a sadness for other people who just don't even know what you're talking about and maybe don't even want it, and that's okay. I mean, if you're welcome to walk whatever path you want in this life. If you want to be a corporate whore and, you know, and just hurt people and be a sociopath and destroy the environment, hey, you know, I don't like you, but that's your right. But I don't know, man, they don't look happy. That's what I'm always looking for. I love, you know, when I talk about, and Travis has picked up on this, I'm a payoff person. There has got to be something in it for me, and I wasn't going to do any of this recovery stuff unless you told me, is it worth it? I got to know, what am I getting out of this? And hell, it's been way more than I could have even. And I look around. I look at the other paths. You know, what do they have? What do they got? They might have money. They got a better car than me, but they just don't look like they're enjoying the ride as much. That's what I want. I had my nurse who comes in to give me my infusions every 2 months. She said, "You're very nurturing." I said, "That is not a word anybody would have said about Christopher back in the day." I mean, I was a nice guy. That's what people in my high school say. When I try to make amends to him, like, don't worry, you were a good kid. But I don't know. It's just, that's you're allowed to bring out sides of yourself that never would have developed had you not been open to experiences and teachers. And to watch you do that, and Dan's going through a phase right now, a growth spurt, huge, where his emotions are being teased out. And he's becoming and funny enough, so is Shane. I gave Shane that compliment the other day, that he's getting much more comfortable expressing his tears and getting emotional when he talks. And it's powerful, man. I'm telling you, every time I'm in group, and I can tell my patients will check out when somebody's just coming from their head, and then somebody gets fucking real, and they're like, they zoom in on it because it's fucking emotional and real. And I'm very excited for you, and I think there's a reason why the Scott Lee trip got put on hold, and she's opening you up to be ready for Scott. Is kind of the way I'm looking at it a little bit.
That's interesting. Yeah, that it is exciting, and then like that nurturing word, we walk around and that's cool. I would say, people feel a safety in me when I'm there, and people will drop stuff like they will tell you unbelievably intimate issues of what's going on with them, more so than our relationship has built up to. Normally people don't do that, and it feels so cool. I love that. I see my eyeglass lady once a year, and she gives me a download on when she adjusts my eyeglasses, gives me a little download in what's going on in her life and her family. She's got some stuff, and as we all do, and you can feel a lightness of her after I leave there. She's dropped some baggage, sort of. Let's set some stuff down when you go, and then you leave, and you see their you've been a benefit in their lives, even if just for a moment. And it's wild how people will tell you stuff. Shane talks about it all the time, just rolling around. And then I see them and I've got that thing where I remember people real well. I walked back in the office yesterday, and it wasn't that long ago, but it was 6 years. And most of the people, a number of the people, they remember my face, but they couldn't really remember who I was. And I remember every one of them. So I'll see the eyeglass lady in the Kroger's, and you see them out and about in town and stuff, and you got these loose relationships that are really cool to have. It's a blessing to have these people. Like you said, I think we all worry about our legacy and what people are going to say about, what's the message they're going to say about Dan when Dan's no longer here, Was he a dude who left good energy around, a dude who worked to help other people? Or are you just going to be another one of these guys that nobody really could know because you couldn't be open to people?
Yeah, I try to warn my patients, you don't want on your tombstone, well, he really liked his beer. What else are they going to say?
Yeah.
I was counseling someone recently who was talking about someone they dearly love is consumed with the disease right now. And they're getting to that scary phase of threatening and acting out. And they said, I saw the devil in their eyes. Ooh. And I was like, oh. I mean, it took me right back to my dad. I was like, oh, geez. There was those moments where he would just disappear entirely, and I'd be terrified. I'd look at there was nothing there. Is that evil, right? And that is not what you want to leave behind. No. So it's time to start getting busy. Get on board with what we're talking about. There's a way out. And the 12 steps is the easiest, simplest, quickest 4 to 6 months way to get you on the road. To clean out house first, you've got to clean out your house. You can't put new juice on old shit. You got to clean out the old garbage. And once you get rid of that, then you start with this new vessel, and you're like, okay, what direction do I want to go? Maybe I do want to go back to my church. Maybe I want to try a new church. But get new teachers, definitely. You need people to guide you on that journey. Now, one aspect I wanted to make sure we touched on that I think is probably one of the greatest parts of recovery, but one of the most important parts of the spiritual path is being able to be there at times when it really matters. And I've watched the difference in your daughter's journey from you being able to be sober and be there versus if you hadn't been sober, who God knows what tragedies could have happened. And my ability to be there for my dad when he had cancer, even though I hated his fucking guts and I wasn't yet healed from my resentments because I was still in relatively early recovery. But I showed up, you know what I mean? And I counseled so many of my patients who are like, I didn't go see my father when he was passing away, or I don't even go to his gravesite, you know. And I've tried to do the right thing, because that's part of our 12-step spiritual path, is we're going to do the next right thing even when we don't freaking want to. And the difference that makes in my ability to feel a positive goodness about my character that I did not have before, which was a big part of using, was we're just beating the crap out of ourselves because we are kind of a piece of shit. But to know that, you know, if nothing else, at the end of the day, you can count on me. And at the end of the day, I am a man of my word. If I say I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. And I suit up and I show up. And I've always taken that one to heart. That's one of my biggest, most common ones I use. Suit up and show up when it's important, especially. And my mom right now, she's going through a lot. I try to be there for her. Just talked to her before coming in here. Anybody that needs me, I'm available, especially emotionally. You know, I think that's so important. What was that latest thing that Catherine had brought to my table about 7 minutes? When somebody's in real crisis, this is scientifically proven, and they're in real crisis. If you can just give them 7 minutes of face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and be totally present for them and let them share, it will usually get them out of it for the moment. They might have to go see a therapist. They might have to go get some other help. But just that's all we need, 7 minutes. And yet, how many people are so busy and self-absorbed that they don't even have that for somebody in your life you care about who you know is in trouble, but you can't spend 7 minutes with them. And boy, I'm always astonished. You talk about the miracles of spiritual growth in this program. You're talking about the most self-centered, self-absorbed people on earth that have the brain of a squirrel that's constantly like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. I mean, we can't even focus on anything. And then you see this guy, after he's done the 12 steps, and he's spending an hour with a newcomer listening to newcomer bullshit. And he knows it's bullshit. And it's fucking driving him crazy. But he's being present with his new guy out of love. He doesn't want anything. He's not trying to get in his wallet. He's just there because he loves the guy. That's astonishing to see that level of growth. And I don't know, man. Where else are you going to get that? I mean, I know people that see Jesus, but they still can be kind of an asshole. Some of them at times. So I don't know. I've never seen that transformative state happen in any other approach. And any words you want to share on that? Being there for people.
I run into these people, like some people who are walking some path. A lot of these guests that come on my podcast, and they are always, when I talk about this, they're blown away. Most of them don't know anything about the 12 steps. And, I get to be a pretty good example of it today. And again, they got where they're going. But usually when I hear their stories, these is years-long transformations. And ours is too, sort of. Yours is 40 years, and you're not the same one as you were at year 10 or 20 or any of that. So it's the same thing with us. But to actually be springboarded so quickly, like I said, at 4 to 6 months of this work, and you can transform yourself, and then you can actually, that opens you up as a vessel to be able to take in more of life's miracles and more spiritual growth and stuff. And no, I haven't seen nothing that does it as effectively as this does. And a lot of it is that face-to-face, man. I'm gonna get to know this guy. I'm gonna let him know that I do really care about him. I really do. That's why I'm sitting here with you for an hour or so every week and doing this, because I care about you.
And that challenge that your daughter has been through, and you being the one person in the family that was there for her, we don't have to get in the details. Nobody can quantify the karmic effect difference that made in her life's journey.
Yep.
And that's kind of why we're all here, folks. We are all here to help each other. It's the one thing that gets lost in all these differences of opinion and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, okay, so you look at it differently. What's the big deal? But if you need help, I can still help you, and we can still disagree. Thank God for that in the program. Otherwise, many of my sponsees I wouldn't have sponsored if I had to agree with them on everything, right?
Yeah, and vice versa.
Yeah. So Now, you're probably getting your appetite whetted listening to us talk about how great this is. And you're like, where do I sign up? And so I want to give you some directions. First of all, check out our podcast. We have lots of different aspects of the 12-step toolkit that we try to address a different topic every week. You can read this AA Big Book right here, and you can substitute whatever you think your demon is. If your demon happens to be money and possessions and materialism, or your demon happens to be codependency, because you're having all these crappy relationships and never getting your needs met. So you can substitute that for the word alcohol in there, but, it's a little dated. The wording is hard because it's written in the 30s. But if you hang in there, I'm on step 4 right now, and it's already written. Don't get me wrong. We are refining and making it even better. And that will, I'm making you a promise, it will be out this year. Sooner rather than later is what we're hoping for. So we want to share this with everyone. We want to make it as easy as possible to get in the door. That's always been my mission, is to widen the doorway and make it as easy for as many people to get through as possible. And you can have this too. Any last words about the journey being worth it? Because, I do want to do a closer on this, because it's so hard to describe, but good Lord, worth it? It's not even close to asking that question.
Yeah, that's
your life's about to begin.
Yeah.
It is truly reborn,
Yeah.
Like Bill says in the Big Book, it's not like my old life was all that bad, but the new one can't even compare. It doesn't even come close. I guarantee you could say that. Travis could say that. Shane, anybody. Derek, we're going to have on in a week. He's going to say the same thing. It's just a totally different way of living I never knew before, right?
Yeah. We could talk about it all day long, and I don't know. If we can
Never really
convince people
communicated.
about it. Yeah, unless there's got to be a few people out here that are looking for something. That found this podcast and they didn't know why, and that they're open enough to try it. Give it a shot.
So, stay tuned. Best decision I ever made in my life was to let go. Have the humility to say maybe someone else can teach me something, because believe me, that was a challenge. You could have presented that to me, but I would have said, I don't think I know everything. I probably said that to my counselor back in treatment, but I acted like I did. And once that happened, then that created the environment for new teachers to cross my path. For you, it might be a book that you see all of a sudden that you hadn't noticed, and you're like, that's kind of calling me. I don't know why. Check it out. How about adding to your YouTube feed and putting in your watch later list new things on spirituality and meditation and relationships and boundaries and whatever you're working on. It's amazing how many hours a day we waste looking at and watching crap. So there's always a way to feed that side of you to start developing your spiritual path. And as I haven't said it a million times before, we are not talking about religion. We're talking about your personal journey to discover who you are and what's meaningful to you in this world, and what's your reason for being alive, basically, what gets you out of bed in the morning. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate you. We're going to transition now where we answer your questions every week, and we hope if you have questions about anything we talked about, please send them to us at IAM12, the word recovery, at gmail.com. That's IAM12, the word recovery, at gmail.com. And we make you a promise. We will never identify your identity, so you can ask anything at all. And do me a favor, guys, write me stories, not like pages, but write me a couple of paragraphs like, okay, this is what's going on. This person's cracked out. This person's driving me crazy. What's going on with this? And this is my question. Sometimes all I do is get this question without any background or context, and it's like, well, it makes it really hard to answer because it's too generic. So send us some, what's going on in your life? What are you struggling with right now? What could we help you with? If you had a guru, a personal guru to go to on a mountaintop and ask them, I need help with this. What's going on in your life? That's all we want to help you with. And that's what we're going to talk about now. All right. Real quick before we get to the questions, I did remember I wanted to share the lyrics from this song. When I was first getting sober, music was such a vital source of solace and learning. I'd used getting into new artists, especially ones that were in recovery. I was very blessed that Stevie Ray Vaughan, the blues guitarist, was doing his recovery when I was getting into it, and coming out with albums writing about his recovery journey, and just any lyrics that had to do with recovery and not drinking and being sober, I just fed on. But one of the artists I rediscovered, I knew them before, but I never really got too deep into them, was Cat Stevens. And Cat Stevens, who I got to know mostly at the beginning a long time ago in the movie Harold and Maude, my favorite movie ever. You should check it out. He has this song called On the Road to Find Out. And there's a couple of lyrics in there that were always in my head when I was thinking about my journey up the mountaintop to see if it's worth it. And he says it here at the beginning. He says, well, I left my happy home to see what I could find out. I left my folk and friends with the aim to clear my mind out. Well, I hit the rowdy road, and many kinds I met there, and many stories told me on the way to get there. So on and on I go, the seconds tick the time out. There's so much left to know, but I'm on the road to find out. And that's always given me a chill. It gives me a chill even to say it now. And he was a big inspiration to me. Whew. See how you can access these things. So go on the road, man. Music will have different meaning, and start switch up your playlist, check out new things, and you'd be astonished what you can find in there. Go on the road. Find out for yourself. All right, we have 3 questions this week. They're all pretty damn good, if I don't mind saying myself, so let's get right into them here. So I've just seen your episode 39. I appreciate everything you all said. I would like to know your thoughts on medical marijuana now that it's going to be legal in most states and prescribed here in Kentucky. Yep, we just got the medical approval here in Kentucky, which right after that, recreational usually follows very soon. So I would like to know your all's personal thoughts on guilt and shame, especially if somebody is prescribed medical marijuana. Should they feel guilty or be ashamed because of that? Absolutely not. Let's get that straight right off the bat. Your medical stuff is yours. We have a reason in my field why it's federal offense if we share your medical information with anybody else. So it's, your medical journey is your medical journey, and everybody has a right to decide for themselves. And I will defend that on every level. And I think you all know what I mean. Everybody has a right to decide for themselves. I believe we should also be able to decide for ourselves when the time we want to check out. And I think that's probably going to be coming. I read an article a long time ago about the baby boomers driving that once they see how medical interventions can extend life, but they also see how miserable it is and how painful it is, they're going to want to be like, nah, man, I'm done. I've already lived all this time. Let me go. And right now I think it's only Oregon that will allow you to do that. Maybe some other state up east too, but Oregon for sure. But on the medical marijuana issue, just so we are clear about, we know for sure psychiatric intervention that's been proven to work with medical marijuana. So marijuana does not help any psychiatric condition. We have to be very clear about that. We do know that it's helpful to some people with nausea when they're under extreme chemotherapy or have AIDS or other severe diseases. We do know that it's effective for certain types of seizures for certain people, children even, but they're very particular seizures. You have to be a certain kind. But we do not have any medical information yet because this is a totally new drug. This is the one point that I see gets missed as we get in this argument between, I'm prescribed it or it's legal. And it's like, yeah, it's legal because they want to make money off it. This is America. What country do we live in? It's always driven by the moneymakers. So once they figured out they could make money on it, now they're changing their heart on it. And if you don't know that, John Boehner, probably the most conservative Speaker of the House that ever was around, he joined a medical marijuana, or not a medical, he joined a marijuana company when he left the Congress or Senate, whatever the hell it was. When I saw that years ago, I was like, oh, it's over. It is over, man. So they want to make money. And right now, since the drug is so new and so potent, we've had to open up all new studies. And studies take time, 10 to 15 years minimum. So until we know exactly what it's going to do to you, you are taking a risk. You need to hear that. It's okay. It's your decision. There's no judgment. I'm not guilty nor shaming you. I'm giving you information to consider. You're taking a risk. And a lot of people are out there professing it'll cure this, it'll do this, CBD will do this, all this stuff. We have no studies. So anybody can say anything because why? It's not regulated in any way, shape, or form. I can tell you that this pillar will cure your headache if I hit you over the head with it. And you'll be like, sure. Remember the old medicine man that used to come through the Wild West and sell you that old tonic? That's the time we're in right now. And there's nobody regulating it. The FDA is not involved. Nobody's watching over their shoulder. So, and these people are going to the dispensaries and they're getting their edibles. Well, guess what? People who are doing studies are going to the dispensaries and they'll gather up a bunch of different ones randomly from different spots. And then they test them and they're all over the map on their intensity. There's no regulation. There's more regulation in your Captain Crunch cereal. And there's none as to how much THC is actually in that. They can say whatever they want. It's 90%, it's 80%. Nobody's having them prove it. They won't go to jail for lying because there's nobody regulating it. So again, you're taking a bit of a risk because we don't know if it's, first of all, if it's going to be effective because there's no proven science that's going to be effective for whatever condition they're giving it to you for. And secondly, we don't know if there's going to be side effects 10 years down the road because the drug is so potent. I do have a friend of mine right now who's suffering serious burnout, and his brain is so damaged that we couldn't get him off the seat to stop talking at the meeting this last week. And that's the result of too much smoking marijuana. He talked about acid, but it was the marijuana that, and that's the low grade. That was back in the day. So there are going to be consequences down the road that people are going to be like, what? I didn't know it did that. Just like people are showing up in hospitals and they can't stop vomiting. That's a real condition from the new marijuana. And they can't stop vomiting to the point where they're going to starve to death. So do your research. Whatever you decide to do for yourself, holistic or otherwise, I hope you're doing as much reading and checking out from reputable, scientifically proven sites. And please understand there's a world of difference between treating your condition or treating your symptoms. And this is the point that everybody misses. I highly recommend Anna Lembke, Lembke. Anna Lembke. She's a neuroscientist. She specializes in addiction. She's a genius, and she's cool. You can tell she smoked pot in her life. She's not anti-whatever, but she's scientific. And she says the problem is it relieves your condition, what you think, but it's your symptoms that are relieved. It's not doing a damn thing for your actual condition. You're not getting any better. In fact, if your condition is not being treated properly, you're probably getting worse. So I have to say that right up front for anybody out there that's news to. You are taking a risk for your future health. The other thing I would say is, if you're not an addict or an alcoholic, go do you, man. This is the approach of recovery. It's been that way since 1935. We are not witch burners. We don't care what you do. If your drinking is not a problem, it's none of our business. If your drinking is a problem and you want help, then it's our business. But you got to decide that for yourself. So as far as feeling ashamed or guilty, if you're not an addict, do what you want to do. I know for me, one is never going to be enough. And I had a button in my head. I have a little bit, and it goes, more, buddy. We're just getting started. And that may happen over a night, or it may happen over weeks. I've seen it happen over months for people who went to full-blown relapse. But it's uncanny that it always gets to that point where you're using more. And Anna Lembke talks about that in the science, that even if you're not an addict, your brain will regulate because the drug is so potent, it will down-temper your D2 receptors for dopamine. And now when you're not smoking, you won't feel nothing. You'll be blah, and then. So now I got to smoke more just to feel normal. You are going to get in that trap. So take your risks, take your chances. But it's not really an issue of guilt or shame. The only issue I have with it on that is when people come into recovery and say they're sober, but they're doing the California sobriety and they're still smoking weed. We need to be real clear about what sobriety is because it tarnishes the hard work that people are doing once every day to get their head to their pillow sober at night. That's a noble, heroic path. I'm not doing a goddamn chemical for almost 41 years of my goddamn life. That is a major milestone achievement. Don't you dare tarnish that by smoking weed and saying you're sober. Yes, I have an issue with that. Plus, it communicates a wrong message to other people because we're trying to get over this thing of needing something from outside of ourselves to fix our insides. That's what addiction is I'm not okay. I need to use this just to feel okay. I don't want to do that anymore. Dan and I just spent a whole podcast talking about the juice and is recovery worth it? That's what I'm looking for, is that state where I don't have to use something just to enjoy my goddamn life. And that's freedom. That is total freedom. So you do you. There is no judgment. I'm not saying one way or the other. But I would also say, as an addiction therapist who's seen tragedy day after day come into my hospital, do not kid yourself. This is a major narcotic. This is not Mother Earth marijuana. This is altered by man, and man has made it so potent that the brain does not know what to do with it. We've never had it before, and it's getting only stronger. People doing dabs and do's and this and that, and I'm like, what the, Jesus Christ. And the cartridge delivery systems, Anna Lemke will tell you about that. That's a guaranteed trip to a treatment center. So be careful. And if you didn't pick this up, I'm saying all this from my heart. I am not trying to come down on you. I have concern for people. I feel like people are being swayed into the abyss, and they don't realize what they're signing up for. And boy, you just stay tuned. We've had these moments in time where a drug came along and it was the miracle fix for everything. And then people found out later, oh, I got fooled again. Go figure. Be careful. That's all I'm saying from my heart is be careful. Dan, any thoughts on that? I know I covered every base.
Covered it pretty
I didn't even
well,
know I was going to say that much. Sorry about that.
But they told us a lot of things were going to be okay. You know, they told us that cigarettes were going to be okay.
Told us that Oxycontin
was going to be okay. You know, told us that benzos and blah 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 and stuff that's been taken off the market that they don't even sell anymore.
Quaaludes.
Yeah, and whatever it was that apparently all the women were taking back in the 50s and 60s to get through their day. You know, and yeah. And you know, when you said if you have had previous substance abuse issues, you damn sure better will be looking at if that's going to be a good idea or not for you. I don't know that anybody, I guess they do, but I just have a hard time registering that anybody is really doing anything with any level of real control. And I suppose there's people out there, I just probably am biased, but the guy who just has one highball in the evening, I don't know. Maybe they do. I was at a customer's house the other day that had so much booze sitting around, I couldn't believe it. He was a liquor salesman, and this stuff was everywhere. And there was some bottles, I think, in that Pappy Winkles or something.
That's the high grade stuff, brother.
3 bottles of it that all had about a quarter out of it, and so the evidence there, it didn't look like this guy's drinking alcoholically. So there's evidence here and there because we can't keep it around if we.
Well, let's translate that to marijuana, because if it's one highball a night, we're talking 2 puffs.
Yeah.
How many people are doing just 2 puffs in a day?
Yeah, I don't think you are.
Well, once you get hooked on it, I don't see that they can.
Because you're going to need to get up in the morning and do some more.
Yeah, and my patients will say, I used to be able to keep it out of work, and now suddenly I was slipping it into work, and because you start having to do it during the whole day.
Yeah, and like you said, all these other delivery systems, these edibles, and these, they used to have pop brownies, right? Back but they say these edibles will knock your socks off.
Yeah. Every celebrity I've heard who's done them says, what the... Because they weren't expecting it. They thought, oh, sure, I've done edibles back in the day.
I guess it hits your system some completely different way.
Knocks you out. It almost is like heroin is the way they describe it, the way they got knocked the hell in their ass.
Yeah, well, hopefully.
And to me, that's not even enjoyable. I was talking to one of my coworkers about that. It's like, we used to get high to get high.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy things. I don't want to get knocked out. That's later in the evening we get knocked out, you know?
Yeah.
So, again, this all comes from love. I hope you can hear that. Go in with your eyes wide open, because it's your journey and it's your health and it's your future and it's your family. And I'm telling you, you don't want to find out later, oh, shit, lung cancer. What? I was prescribed this. Yeah. 1 marijuana joint in the old days, I don't know what the new days does, was 4 cigarettes. So 1 joint. And that was the mini joint. It's not a big old puff dragon. 4 cigarettes. So how many are you smoking a day? Plus cigarettes, some of y'all. Not me, bro. I've been watching Breaking Bad, and the guy's got lung cancer, and he's coughing up blood and all that shit. It's like, oh, it looks awful. Not me, bro. So I hope you'll be careful. That's my main message for anybody out there. Just realize we live in a culture that wants to sell you something 24/7, and we're all being sold something. I would like to be sold wholeness and health and spirituality. All right, here's a good question for us. Where do you, Dan the man, sorry, where do you see the future of AA or NA 20 to 30 years from now? In the year 20,000. Old Conan fans. I picked this question because I wanted to talk about a little background on this, because I had the greatest sponsor that I don't know anybody I've ever met that knew more about the history of AA, and Bill Wilson was his personal hero. So he was an archive of what that man did and what his journey was about. And Bill Wilson wrote these articles in a magazine called The Grapevine, which was our AA magazine. And he wrote those right up to the time he died. But in the very last article he wrote for The Grapevine, he wrote an article, and I've never heard anybody else bring this up in a meeting until I met this man. And this was many decades in recovery before I heard this. And he said in his last writing, AA should and must change in the future. Now, I run into a lot of people who are very resistant to change, and I get it. We have traditions. We have guidelines. These things work. We don't want to mess with the formula so much that it doesn't work anymore. I am more than a gatekeeper on that. But I also have learned from Bill Wilson that there's bendability and flexibility to this. That's why he called them traditions and not rules. That's why he called them traditions and suggestions and not laws. Laws are pretty firm. You break the law, you're going to jail like Dan was about to. But no, traditions are meant to be flexible and breathing and living and can change and grow and expand. So you also have to take the context of when Bill wrote that article. That was in 1969, to my knowledge. What was happening in the country in 1969? Ooh, man, peace and love, summer of love, 67, man. And what was happening? A lot of the drug heads were coming into AA. Where else are they going to go? Yeah, NA was around, but it wasn't that big. And that's what prompted him to say, we're going to have to deal with this, and we're going to have to change and grow. And I think what he was communicating in his last message to all of us was that we are the guardians of the way it's done in the past, while at the same time we have to have a tolerance and a growth ability to incorporate what's going to be more effective in the future, because now we have science that we didn't have before. Now we have people coming in with all sorts of issues. There's, it's hard to find a pure alcoholic at a meeting anymore, I'm sure there's old dogs, but I'm telling you, most everybody smoked a joint at some time in their life. And, my old sponsor even would get up and he would apologize when he would tell his story. Well, I have to apologize and I'm going to have to talk a little bit about drugs. I'm like, wait a minute. They invited you here to tell your experience, strength, and hope, and you're apologizing for your experience, strength, and hope. Now, look, I'm not going to get up in a meeting and talk in detail about how to rig up a heroin needle. That would not be appropriate. But I can talk about my experience as it will be helpful to the newcomer. Because guess what? I had a newcomer one time that didn't know that smoking pot was not allowed in AA because he never heard anybody talk about drugs. And he got to his 1 year and realized he didn't have 1 year of recovery, and he was very sad. So everybody's message, everybody's story has value. And don't ever apologize for your tale of honesty of what you went through. We're supposed to tell the truth, right? So again, that's not a threat to the AA primary purpose for a guy to tell his experience, strength, and hope. And if AA does not change, look at this new population that's coming in, guys. The people I'm getting in group, if I get youngsters in there, I'm telling you, they can't even keep their focus for 2 seconds without having to look at their cell phone or whatever. They're a different breed, I'm telling you. And are they going to think, well, AA's outdated and it doesn't really have anything for me and it doesn't look appealing? Okay, great. We can say, well, fuck them, but guess what's going to happen to AA? It's going to die because AA and NA live on the newcomer. We have to have new people coming in with that lifeblood to keep this going. Otherwise, it'll pass on like the Washingtonians, another movement that came and went. And I know that's astonishing for even any of us to think about. Really? AA's not going to be there for my grandchild? Yeah, that's possible. So look, I've always said that I'm a believer we need all voices. I'll take the conservatives. I can deal with them. I also like guys that are pushing the boundaries a little bit. I can deal with those people too. I think we need all of them. But Bill Wilson himself said AA will and must change. So to answer your question, in 20 or 30 years, it will probably be a little different. Not major, but we'll still read how it works, blah, blah, blah. But it'll be a little different than it is today. I can't tell you, 30 years ago, you did not have the openness to talk about the shit that people are talking about in meetings today that they, when I came in the 80s, you couldn't bring up feelings. You get laughed out of the room by these guys. In my home group, we talk about feelings. A poor guy got out this week, talked about losing his father almost, going through that journey. Guys in the old days, get over it, man. Just it was insane how abusive it was. So yes, in 30 or 20 years, it's changed tremendously since I've been coming around, especially when I moved back to Louisville, and it was more conservative here than Minneapolis or California. So just know, we have this thing called a God conscience. As long as we're all working the tools and trying to work the principles and get along with each other, love and tolerance is our code, we will be okay. The program will survive. It's a pretty strong program. But boy, I see people get so bent out of shape over small shit. And I'm like, really? You think that's a threat to AA, that the new guy came in and said, I smoked some pot, and you're going to jump his shit at this first meeting and make him never come back, and he might die because of you? Does that make you feel good, old-timer? I'm sorry. I'll fight that battle. So, any thoughts on that one, Dan the Man? I know you've seen some change even in the time. You've been around 10 years.
Yeah, well, I actually been around about 15.
Well, that's
Four
true.
of them was stumbling around in AA and trying to find some other way to do it than what they were all telling me to do. But so it's quite a bit changed. The drug thing has lightened up a whole bunch just in my time. 15 years ago, I had people around me telling me to don't mention my drug use in the AA meeting. And that almost killed me because I wasn't talking about my opioid use, I was keeping it to that. I did have both sides of it, but you know how this disease is. It's going to run with the side it likes to run with. And it wanted to
I'm looking for a reason to leave.
Yeah,
if I'm a newcomer, I want to find why I'm different and I don't belong here.
Yep. So, and I like you. I think this is too good a program to die, I think. As long as people like you, me, and our guys keep on doing the heavy lifting and keeping the doors open and being helpful souls in the rooms, we got to. It's ultimately to the question asker. It's up to you too, buddy, to help keep this thing going.
Really great point.
I have a responsibility to keep this thing flowing through me so that my great-grandkid or whoever down the road, or your great-grandkid or his great-grandkid can have a way to get off this train when it comes time for them to need it.
We are the gatekeepers. We are the preservers of this message. We also need to be a little open-minded, too.
Yep, we do.
Great question, and I assume this person might be in early recovery, which is even doubly awesome, because that makes it even deeper question. You're even thinking about the future of the program. Pretty cool. All right, this was a great last question to end on, and then we'll wrap it up for you here, because this really addresses the people around us that I don't think we talk enough about, these poor people that suffer from all of our shenanigans. So here's the question. What is the best advice you can give to your brothers and sisters in Al-Anon? Hey, Al-Anon people, how you doing? Good to see you. For helping give comfort and support to the addict without being codependent. Let me reread that. What is the best advice you can give to your brothers and sisters in Al-Anon for helping give comfort and support to the addict without being codependent? Great question. I mentioned my tax person who I was talking to 2 days ago about her daughter, and the first message I want to communicate emphatically to the families and the friends around the addict is to learn and to keep primary in your mind that they have an illness. They have an actual disease. Because even as this woman knows so much about this, I can tell she's been to some meetings, she's trying to help her daughter, and she's still looking at me going, why the fuck is she doing this? Why would she go back and use it? Why is she doing this? She's sick. Now here's the thing. I work in a mental hospital. Nobody would ever ask me, why is that schizophrenic hearing voices? That's just fucked up. Well, they need to stop doing that. I don't know why they're doing that. They're doing it. I think they're doing it on purpose. What's their problem? And I have had psychiatrists say that about my patients. Addicts and alcoholics. Yes, people being paid way more money than me who still don't get it, that they're just have a mental disorder. This is the problem with society. This is the problem with all of us, because if they don't have a mental disorder and they're doing it on purpose, you're going to personalize it and you're going to feel all that pain like they're doing it to you. They are doing it to me. I'm their mother and they know better. They know they're hurting me and they're just trying to get at me. No, they're not. They're literally consumed in this madness. And I had 2 people this last week in my group relapse, and the stories they told about how insane they just fell into it. And to me, it's nothing. I'm just like, it's part of the process. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're being honest so we can get you out of a total relapse. It's just a slip, but it's part of the journey. Addicts and alcoholics use. And we have this weird voice in our head that says, I think I can try it one more time. It'll work this time. It'll be different. I know I can figure it out. It'll work. So if you look at them from having a mental illness, you just don't fret so much about the whys. You know what I mean? You're not caught in that loop, because that's a nowhere loop. You'll never answer that damn question. Then, if they have a mental illness, the major message you can give them without being codependent, because the codependency occurs when you are doing something to help them that you feel in your heart you shouldn't be doing, or you feel like you're overextending yourself, or you're kind of beating yourself up saying, I'm giving in, I shouldn't give in. That's your inner spirit telling you they're crossing your boundaries. So yes, that's where the codependency occurs. But being supportive and listening, to a point. But the main thing I want you to communicate to them is, look, here's the deal. You have to accept that you're sick, and until you accept help to get well, you're not going to get better. Your life is never going to get better. And Dan had a man tell him some version of that, saying your life's going to get a hell of a lot worse, actually, but you're never going to get better. And that's the main message you need to be communicating to them, is like, I want to help you when you're sick, but I won't help you stay sick. And so until you accept, Joe, Steve, Mary, that you're sick and accept help to get better, don't expect your life to get any better. So don't be crying to me about your money problems, whatever jail thing's going on this week. Yeah, no shit. You will not accept any help to get better. Do you want to get better? Well, let's go get some help. No, not yet. Okay, that's cool. And that's where the line is, where you don't try to manage their journey, but you're putting a subtle pressure on them that you can't be toyed with, and they can't come to dump all their crap on you. And they're kings and queens of that. They'll use you up if you let them. So just keep communicating that message, that I love you and I do care about you, but I'm not going to help you stay sick. And until you accept you're sick and you will really be willing to accept some help, your life's not going to get any better. So expect crap to happen. And then I'll talk to you later. Any thoughts on that, Dan? Because it's a tricky thing, man. Addicts and alcoholics are conning, lying, thieving, and we wear people out.
Yes,
train them, man.
Yep. What did it say? Something like, what do you tell the people who are in Al-Anon what to do around their addict kid children or whatever?
Yeah.
We did a whole episode on that one time about how to help your addict, how to do that. And again, you answer these questions so beautifully that a lot of times I don't have anything much to add.
I'll add that, it's great you're going to Al-Anon. I mean, you're going to get tools there and real life experience from other people who have already been down the road with handling that. And you'll be like, I can use that. You know what I mean? But what you don't want to do is obsess about their journey. They're in the hands of their higher power. They have their own process. It's a phrase I heard somebody say the other day they hated, but they know it's true. They have their own process. And their process is going to drive you into the nut house if you get too involved. You need to pull back and say, hey, I got to deal with my own stuff, And I can't jump just because you're having a crisis. One of my favorite phrases I learned over the years is, your unmanageability is not my responsibility. And I do not have to come clean up your doo-doo. So, but keep reinforcing, especially when they're in that spot of hurting. I know it might seem cruel, but it's the best way to reach through. It's the only time they may hear it. It's like, you're sick, and until you accept help, your life's never going to get any better. You've got to accept that this is a disease. And man, I have to fight that battle with my patients day in, day out. They still blame themselves and beat themselves up. And now they got their parents and their family saying, you're doing it on purpose. You're doing it to us. Why can't you just stop? Psychiatrists have said that. I've always just been like, what the fuck? Why don't you go say that to that psychotic on Thorazine in the corner? Why don't you tell them to stop being crazy? Go walk over there and do that, Nurse Jones. I just want to scream that at them. But it's that bias. That hate that we've had in our culture for the addict and alcoholic since the dawn of time. True, we are assholes, but goddamn, do we deserve that much? They just want to beat us into sobriety. It doesn't work, guys. I got a whole jail filled with people over here. It ain't worked for them. So let's try something different. You're sick. You have a disease. You got to get help if you want your life to get better. And just like 5-year-olds, repeat that message over and over and over. Otherwise, they're going to maybe die thinking it was them that pulled the trigger. No, your disease has you. You're hijacked. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up, Dan?
Nope. Great job.
Oh, it's been a long journey today. We got a little emotional. We don't hit you over the head with this, but just real quick, if you wouldn't mind, please like, subscribe, or comment at the bottom because that helps us get our analytics up, and we're trying to reach as many people as possible. Plus, we just love to hear from you. So if you're able, drop us a line in the comments. Say, what up? What up, dogs? Whatever's on your mind. But we'd love to hear from you. Plus the questions. Again, iam12recovery@gmail.com. All right, we like to close with the serenity prayer to put a bullet point on all meetings and things like that. So, Dan, if you would like to join me with the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woohoo! Keep coming back. We love you. See you next week. Peace out.